Hi folks, I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hi everybody, I'm Ken Calvert, and before we get started with today's podcast, I just wanted to alert you to the fact that the podcast does sound a bit dated. Hours after recording, we found out that the Pope was released that day from the hospital. All of us continue to pray for the Pope, and as always, thank you so much for listening. Hi again, everybody. I'm Ken Calvert, and we would like to welcome you to the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast. Things appear to be getting back to a new normal, and at Star Lincoln, we're celebrating by offering a $2,500 cash back on select Lincoln Nautilus models and 0 APR for 72 months. The Nautilus has quickly become Lincoln's most popular SUV. Aha, my friends, there is more. Don't forget about the many reasons to visit Star Lincoln, 12 Mile Road, just east of Telegraph in Southfield. The quickest way to shop Star Lincoln is by going online, starlincoln.com. Shop Star Express. Browse online, reach out when you're ready, then pick up or have your new Star Lincoln delivered right to your front door. Experience the ultimate in luxury with the stunning lineup of Star Lincoln SUVs, starting with the full-size Comfort and Extreme Lincoln Navigator, the 2021 Lincoln Aviator, or make your getaway in the 360 Copilot Plus packaged Corsair. Visit starlincoln.com. Star Lincoln, home of the star treatment. Over the 4th of July weekend, there were fireworks of sorts when we found out the pontiff, Pope Francis, was hospitalized. Apparently he had a form of diverticulitis. He had a procedure, and over the past couple of days, there was a press release. Pope Francis has completed his post-surgery treatment, but will remain in the hospital a few more days to fine-tune his course of medication and rehabilitation, the Vatican said on Monday. That would have been on July 12th. When the Pope entered the hospital on July 4th to have part of his colon removed, the Vatican said he would stay about 7 days, barring complications. His Holiness Pope Francis spent a tranquil day on Sunday and completed his post-operative course. That is according to spokesman Matteo Bruni in his daily statement on the Pope's condition. In order to optimize his medical and rehabilitative therapy, the Holy Father will remain hospitalized for a few more days. Bruni said that before the Pope made his public address on Sunday from the balcony of the Gemelli Hospital, he visited children in the nearby cancer ward, some of whom accompanied him to the balcony and stood with him. After the address, the Pope visited other patients and medical staff. The Pope stood for about 10 minutes while delivering the address on Sunday and appeared in overall good condition, although his voice was a bit raspy. The Vatican later released pictures of Francis being taken through the hospital in a wheelchair to visit with other patients and his doctors. In the afternoon, Francis then said Mass in a small chapel of a suite that is reserved for popes on the 10th floor of the Catholic hospital. So I have a few questions for you, and I'm sure you have the time to answer them. My question to you today is, when the President of the United States is ever under general anesthesia, the Vice President, technically during that time, becomes our President because we don't necessarily know the outcome, correct?
Yeah.
You kind of went,
Well, maybe because I'm thinking, what happens in a case like that, whether it's the President or the Pontiff, I think they're on high alert, okay?
Yeah.
They don't make any major decisions because even without the illness, there are so many dicasteries around him that make decisions for him anyway. So everybody is on high alert, and I think the same probably happens for the government. But go ahead, please.
I remember on a couple of occasions that it's come up on news stations when the president is having surgery, the vice president has been alerted, and he's prepared to take over.
Right. It's a high alert, basically.
However, I was reading over the weekend and throughout the week, the position is currently held by Cardinal Kevin Farrell, who is the head of the Vatican laity office. Is that correct?
He's also the head of the household. So he's the camerlengo, as they call it. In other words, once the Pope dies, the announcement comes from him.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, they use the hammer. I think they still do. Did you know that? They bang him 3 times with a hammer to make sure he's dead.
No.
Oh, they do. They do. Some of the history is so funny about that.
Yeah, but that's got to be like the confirmation slap. I mean,
that's all it is.
It's just a ceremonial bang.
They just make sure that he is gone, and then they can announce that he is deceased.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, and so the camerlengo has that job because he's head of the household.
Huh.
Let me say this because I think people get confused. The word dicastery is another word for congregation. So if you speak about the congregation of the laity, there's the dicastery of the laity. And then in Rome, they don't specify, and so people get confused. What is it? Well, they're both the same. That's why. So
Okay.
The dicastery is the congregation.
I see what you're saying.
And there's all these congregations, the congregations for the faith, and so on.
And in doing my research, I find out that he's only 73 years of age. He was born in Dublin, Ireland.
Right.
But he traveled to the United States and eventually became, I believe, the Archbishop of both Dallas and Washington,
yeah.
right?
He wasn't the Archbishop in D.C.
He was made a cardinal in 2016, November 19, 2016, by Pope Francis. So that was just 5 years ago. But either way, he spent a good deal of time both in Washington and in Dallas before getting called back to Rome. Why, of all the people, did Francis take such a attraction to him to become...
I think we have to be careful about that, okay? The Pope is not the one who makes the final decision. The thing is this, there are groups of people, particularly the dicastery of bishops. They're the ones that they place bishops in certain places. And so they're the ones that finally come up with the names, and they present the names to the Holy Father. The Holy Father then chooses among those 3 and says, this shall be it. But it's not like the Pope is saying, well, let's see, who should I think it'll be Farrell, let's call. No, it's very, very complicated. For example, an ordinary bishop, the vetting that goes on, unknown type of vetting. In other words, Ken Calvert, you receive a letter from the Holy Father.
Right.
It's not the Holy Father, but the office of bishop. And it'll say, in pain of mortal sin. I hate to use that, but that's what it does say, though. Under the pain of mortal sin, I would ask that you recommend someone in the diocese for the possibility of becoming a bishop. And also, you have to list what qualifications that person has. So, all of these are sent to Washington, D.C., and the nuncio in D.C. goes through all of these. And eventually he presents a whole bunch to the dicastery of bishops. And finally, the dicastery of bishops goes before the Holy Father and says, these are the names you choose. We're down to 3, so you choose. Now, this happens for every new bishop. So in other words, if they're looking for a new bishop they still are. For example, the chair in Gaylord is still
empty.
Vacant.
Yeah.
So they're still looking for someone there. So it'll be who knows who, but probably someone from Michigan. It doesn't have to be, okay? But probably, because very often the bishops in Michigan and the state have always been somewhat connected to Michigan.
But could it possibly be somebody from another country?
No.
Okay, it will not be somebody from another country.
No.
Okay.
It might be good if we looked up the bio on Farrell. Farrell sounds to me like he left Ireland to become a priest in the United States.
Well, here's what I have. Farrell was ordained to the priesthood in Rome on December 24, 1978. He then served as chaplain to the University of Monterrey in Mexico, where he also conducted seminars in bioethics and social ethics. In the early 80s, he left the Legion of Christ and was incardinated in the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C., 1984. Farrell was assigned as associate pastor of St. Peter's Church in Onley, Maryland. He also served at St. Bartholomew Church in Bethesda, Maryland, and St. Thomas the Apostle Church in Washington, D.C. In 1985, he was appointed director of the Archdiocesan Spanish Catholic Center. Farrell became acting director of Catholic Charities in 1988 and was the Archdiocesan Secretary of Finance from 1989 to 2001. He was raised to the rank of honorary prelate of His Holiness in 1995. In 2001, he was named Vicar General for the Archdiocese and pastor of Annunciation Church in Washington. And on March 6, 2007, appointed Bishop of the Diocese of Dallas by Pope Benedict XVI. There are controversies that have followed Cardinal Farrell. Questions were presented in many news articles as to which of the bishops who served with Theodore McCarrick were aware and did nothing. Farrell is the highest ranking of these bishops, having been chosen in 2001 by McCarrick as an auxiliary bishop and then having served with McCarrick through the next 6 years in the leadership of the Archdiocese of Washington. In those years, Farrell also served in the high-ranking position of Vicar General. Farrell's high regard for McCarrick is demonstrated by the fact that the central lion on his coat of arms was taken from the coat of arms of McCarrick. He also shared a 4-bedroom apartment with McCarrick and 2 priest secretaries for 6 years in Washington, D.C. Journalist Michael Sean Winters called McCarrick Farrell's mentor in episcopacy. On February 16, 2019, McCarrick was defrocked by the Vatican, leveling a historic penalty against a one-time church power broker and former Archbishop of Washington after the church found him guilty of sexual abuse. McCarrick, a former Archbishop of Washington, D.C., became the most senior figure in the Catholic Church to be defrocked after a Vatican hearing found him guilty of sexual crimes in the 70s and the 80s, with the aggravating factor of the abuse of power. Questions were presented in many news articles as to which of the bishops who served with Theodore McCarrick were aware and did nothing. Farrell is the highest ranking of these bishops, having been chosen in 2001 by McCarrick as an auxiliary bishop and then having served with McCarrick through the next 6 years in the leadership of the Archdiocese of Washington. The University of Dallas named their new administration building after Farrell, a former chancellor. In the summer of 2018, after continued negative publicity regarding the relationship between Farrell and McCarrick, a website was formed arguing against honoring Farrell by the university, and a petition was circulated through that website among students and alumni demanding that Farrell's name be removed from the new administration building. So that's it. That's what we got. So, Father Grimaldi, what say you?
All I'm saying is this, but basically, he's an Irish-American, and there are lots of them in the United States, and what happens is he joined the Legionaries of Christ. That's an American order. Actually, it's Irish and Spanish in origin, but then he was elevated to probably Monsignor, then went to Washington as a bishop, and then he was elevated to go to Rome and eventually became a cardinal. But the thing is this, that's not unusual. There's a lot of Italian Americans in Rome. There's a lot of German Americans in Rome. There's a lot of Germans in Rome.
Well, then my question for you is simply this, then. Frame it for me. Is it a position that you would like to have, that most bishops would aspire to have, or is it a calling, or whatever it is? It sounds to me like a really nice job to have. I would love to be the secretary to the Pope.
Of course, nowadays, though, and the reason I'm thinking is when you are a bishop, and particularly when you are a cardinal, you're under scrutiny from morning till night. Who would want to be that? Years ago, it was all perks and no problems. It was.
Okay.
You had drivers to take you wherever you wanted to go. You go to lunch and maybe have a siesta in the afternoon and go to... Well, I'm not exaggerating too much, but that was more or less... It was a very comfortable life.
Yeah.
Today, the news media is on you from, it's now 6:30, the Holy Father begins Mass, and they have cameras in there because keep track of these things for history's purposes. And then his first appointment is at 8:30, and then he goes to the next appointment, then he goes to the next appointment, then, the Holy Father... Oh, he coughed 3 times today. And I'm not exaggerating.
No, I know that. I
mean, they're under scrutiny from the moment. And then, of course, he prayed till about 12 o'clock last night. And then finally went to bed. So, the poor guy, who would want that position?
Yeah.
Now, the secretary to the Pope, the gatekeeper, if you want, his normal day, though, he's head of the household. He's not his secretary.
Okay.
There's a big difference, okay? Head of the household is this, that he sets up the place for state dinners and all of this other stuff, whereas secretary is the one that's the gatekeeper for the Pope, who could see him now, who could see him later, and so on and so forth. These positions, I don't know, years ago people would have loved them because they come with limousines. They did. Not anymore.
Right. Now let's act like the ordinary man.
As much as you can.
Let's act like the parishioners. I mean, as much as you can, yeah.
So it's not an easy position to be in. There are people that want to be bishop, and those are the ones you don't want as bishop.
Really?
Okay?
I do and I don't find that fascinating. I'll tell you why, because of the fact that you all of a sudden out of nowhere get a tap on the shoulder and say, can I see you for a minute, Father? Archbishop wants to discuss something with you tomorrow evening at 7 p.m.
Yeah, they usually give them 2 days because he has to fly to Washington.
Is that what it is?
He doesn't know, but he has to fly to Washington.
Well, does he have a pretty good idea while he's on that plane that he's probably going to find out he's become a bishop?
No, he's going to find out he's going to be vetted.
Oh.
That takes a long time. Is there anything in your history that would cause controversy in the appointment?
Prohibit
and
you
I
from...
say anything. Examine your history well. Were you ever accused of anything? And so on and so forth. And they would know a lot of that already because when the vetting comes, they've done a lot of homework already. See, every bishop in the United States is responsible for, I think, at least every 3 years, if not every year, to send 3 or 4 names to the nuncio in Washington. And then when there is a need, they try to match the personality, the abilities, the talents of the individual to the diocese that needs one.
Wow.
So, and it's not easy. No.
You're not kidding.
And this is why many of the places are sede vacante, as they call them. They're empty for over a year. Matter of fact, poor old Bishop Hurley.
Yeah.
So he's up in Gaylord, this type of thing. It takes a long time, about a year or so more. It depends. Some places more than a year.
Yeah.
And then they find the right person that they think is the right person, and hopefully he doesn't disappoint.
So Farrell's job, what is Farrell's job? What does...
Camerlingo?
Yep. What does he do?
You'd have to look it up. It's called the household. He's head of the household.
In the meantime, the Pope did keep this one really close to the vest, okay? He did the Angelus prayer at noon and then quietly checked into the hospital. Apparently this was the same hospital that Pope Paul passed away in. They have a wing.
I think it's Gemelli Hospital. They take care of the Holy Father usually. But, one of the things I think that disturbs people, who's in charge?
That's going to be the title of the podcast. Who's in charge?
I'm going to split his in 2.
Okay.
He's the Pope, head of the Vatican, but he's also the Bishop of Rome. So as Bishop of Rome, there is what we call a Vicar General, and he's the one who's in charge. whenever the Holy Father is not there, because the Holy Father has two roles. He's got to be the Bishop of Rome and then the head of the church. Then as far as the head of the church, he has all of these dicasteries that are taking care of different aspects of the church. Nothing needs immediate attention. It's not like there's a real emergency. If there is a real emergency, I'm sure he's designated one of the cardinals to step in. And so, because there's always, what do you call that, the stepping stones, there's always somebody there that has to be told of the emergency. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
If there is. But he doesn't have to deal with it. He's got to deal with taking care of himself, getting better, and all of that. And fortunately, it's a routine surgery that at least that's what I read. So it's nothing earth-shattering. You might say, well, why is it 7 days? Well, he's the Holy Father, so they're going to give him the 7 days.
You and I'd be out in 2.
Yeah, but he's going to be there and the place is equipped for him.
Oh, I am sure that it's more than equipped for him. At this point, he's doing well and getting better, although I'm sure that they're trying to keep his load limited at this point.
Yeah, and the questions are limited because the questions go not to him. It's a well-oiled machine with all of these dicasteries. Now, granted, when he's up and about, he's in charge. He's the one that does the face-to-face visits with the heads of state. But I don't think he has to worry about individual questions like he would ordinarily.
That's got to be a schedule unlike anybody else on the planet, with the exception of the President of the United States. Well, even you, for example. You get up so early and you finally get to put your head on the pillow late at night, but you're busy, and your time is very seldom ever really yours alone. And even then, it's spent probably periods in prayer.
First of all, I can't tell you how many Catholics are in the world. So when you say President of the United States, it's a lot bigger job than that. And so he's dealing with, first of all, interstate with all of these different countries, not just one country, all of these different countries and their heads of state. For example, you saw recently where one of the cardinals in Germany resigned. Well, he resigned because he thought he was doing a horrible job, okay? And so the Holy Father did not accept his resignation. Interesting.
No
That's
kidding.
the first time I've heard. So he told them, you go back and work. So he's got to have his eyes fixed on all the countries because all of these people are diverse. I mean, the ethnic diversity is tremendous if you look at all the people that you're dealing with. So many different countries.
As you said, the world.
So I don't know how many Catholics in the world today. Billion.
I believe it's 1.3 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of people to carry.
I mean, he doesn't deal with them individually, but you're dealing with their leaders and so on and so forth.
That adds to my case that the man must have the wherewithal of a human that is almost superhuman.
Let me put it this way. He's not well liked by some people because some people think he lacks the understanding of first world countries. Matter of fact, some people say he should not deal with any type of business because he's used to a third world country and not first world countries. And so it's interesting. And yet, on the other hand, you have people that worship him, adore him, and they wouldn't want to have anybody else. Yeah. So you have the two opposites that he's dealing with. But you see, the way he sees it is this. And I really believe this. He says, what would Jesus Christ do? He's not looking at the economic outcome of any decision financially. He sees what Scripture says. He sees what Jesus says. And therefore, what would he do? And that's what he proposes. Now, some people don't like that. He said, if he were to do that, what would happen to our economy and all of this? And I don't understand a lot about finances, so I'm certainly not going to talk about finances because I don't know what I'm talking about. But I do know this. I think he's a loving man. I think he wants to follow the way to Jesus. And let's face it, If Jesus were around today in certain societies, he would not be accepted.
You're right. You are correct, sir. We should continue to keep Pontiff in our prayers for a full recovery, because he's still a young man at, I believe, aged 84. That would be the Pope. With that said, interesting topic. Because people are asking. It was a hot topic on Google. Who's in charge of the Catholic Church while the Pope is out? It's a popular topic. And we did our best to not confuse anyone, but I'll tell you one thing I did learn today. You folks that are in the clerical side of this, you tend to have a lot of stuff going on.
But not as much as any bishop or any pope. Let me put it that way. I just don't know how they do it because they're under scrutiny. I'm not under scrutiny. So if I want to go out and play golf this afternoon, and I can't golf to save my life, but I could go. And
what if you want to go out and have a pierogi?
It's not going to make the news. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
But if he decides to do that, wow, will that make the news?
With that said, let's pray for the Pope and everyone that's listening.
I think we're at a crucial stage right now with this pandemic. It certainly appears to be over with, and yet this morning's news announcements is that in certain states it's picking up again.
Yeah.
And so people are trying to be cautious. We don't know what the future holds. And so there are a lot of people suffering from doubt. When in quarantine, many of us worry about what the future will hold. And this is normal anxiety to have because it is such an unprecedented time. God, though, challenges us to stay present in the moment when we can. While you are worrying about the future, your child may be struggling today with a project and a need for your attention. Don't get so wrapped up in what may happen that you forget to be aware of what is going on right now. Tomorrow's troubles cannot be fixed today, so ask God for guidance and living for today. So Matthew tells us, this is the Gospel of Matthew, Matthew 6, verse 34. Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble.
Peace be with you.
Peace be with you, and thank you. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe Podcast.
If you'd like, you can email us. It's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. Simply search Father Joe Grimaldi. And thanks for listening, everyone.